Hello, today we are presenting the case study Cultivating Connections, Leadership, and Power Building for Merced School Equity. My name is Guadalupe Corona, and I am a research assistant with Central Valley Health Policy Institute, or CVHPI. I am accompanied today by my colleague who will also be introducing herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Rubio, and I'm also a research assistant with Central Valley Health Policy Institute.
Thank you, Anna. Today's presentation will focus on the leadership development of BHC and advocacy efforts around school equity to improve student resources and outcomes in Merced through the development of people power and power building. We will also focus on how two of the emerging leaders, Xu Zhang and Mercedes Rodriguez, played a key role in uniting the community and garnering support for fund transparency in schools and increasing community input and decision-making processes. I would like to start today's presentation with a little background information about building healthy communities. Next. Building Healthy Communities, or BHC, was a 10-year place-based initiative funded by the California Endowment to advance statewide policies that directly address health inequities at the community level. The Merced Place is made up of Southwest Merced and East Merced County. Next. Over the past decade, BHC Merced has focused on providing a platform for residents and making a difference within three major focus areas, which include restoring and improving school climate, improving neighborhoods, and expanding healthcare systems and access. I'd also like to add that BHC Merced has now transitioned to Valley Onward and is a 501c3 nonprofit organization once the BHC initiative sunset in 2020. Next. As we mentioned before, two key ideas that emerged during the school advocacy efforts were people power and power building. I'd like to quickly go over the definitions for these two important terms for today's presentation. People power refers to building communities where historically excluded adults and youth residents have voice, agency, and power in public and private decision-making to create an inclusive democracy and close health equity. Power building is an investment in an emerging ecosystem of organizations with diverse capacities, skills, and expertise. These are then mobilized as resources to prioritize health equity in decision-making spaces. I will now share briefly about the work of BHC Merced School Action Team and its impact on the school systems, students, and parents. Next. Leaders from the School Action Team came together to push for improvements in the school system and for youth. The School Action Team combined efforts with Merced districts for the implementation of restorative approaches within the school system, rather than the previous zero tolerance policies. Prior to the implementation of these changes, suspension and expulsion rates were disproportionately affecting students of color. In partnership with residents, BHC Merced pushed for these changes in order to improve the performance and outcomes of their students. Next. BHC Merced and residents changed school systems and practices in Merced, including how school systems address the needs of their students and engage with the community through the passage of the Local Control Funding Formula, or LCFF, and the Local Control and Accountability Plan, or LCAP processes. Despite the required community and parent engagement, the purpose and allocation of these funds were not always made clear to the community, and there was a lack of transparency. Through the LCAP process, parents were empowered through training on school district budgets and providing public comments at budget meetings. Planning meetings were moved to areas in Merced that previously lacked representation. Next. On this slide here, we have summarized the impact of BHC's School Action Team. And prior to BHC Schools Action Team, community voices were excluded from agenda setting and decision-making processes. There were access barriers at community meetings, which were monolingual and non-reflective of Merced communities at the time. And there were few community-based leaders in local school governing bodies. Through the work of BHC's School Action Team, authentic community engagement met people where they are, and the voices of parents and youth were central to discussions and agendas. There are also increased joint decision-making between parents, youth, and schools. Lastly, here we have on our list from the impact of the School Action Team, we have more than 18 community-based leaders held seats in local school governing bodies. For this case study, we spoke to key informants, an advocacy leader, and a community leader who are part of the School Action Team. We will now be discussing our first leader, which is our advocacy leader, Xia Zhang.
One of the key participants in the Merced school system is Xia Zhang, an active community advocate and parent. He is also one of the leaders for the school's action team, and shared he has been motivated by personal experiences to improve the current state of the school system and its inequities for the last 30 years. Zhang believes that equality begins with community residents that work toward making a change. He has been involved in multiple roles for his community, such as an advocate and even a school board member, and has helped increase parent involvement in decision-making bodies. During our interview with him, he recalled feeling the impact of inequity when it came to how educational resources were distributed. During his time as a student, he did not see schools devote individualized attention to refugee students, but rather saw disproportionate rates of suspensions and expulsions among refugee students, including some of his own friends. Due to the lack of support and funding resources allocated to high-need students, students would often drop out or be incarcerated. He also described experiencing racism firsthand and explained how these experiences during his youth still fuel his work today. Next, please. Another leader that emerged during the effort to push for improvements in Merced schools is Mercedes Rodriguez, a former elementary school teacher and current resident advocate. Rodriguez explained that she learned about LCAP meetings through a friend, and after realizing how essential these meetings were to improving student resources, she became a regular attendee. As time went on, she began to take charge of leading the meetings, introducing members, and continues to be involved with LCAP efforts. Rodriguez stated that BHC Merced provided a great deal of help by hosting training sessions and opportunities to practice and nurture leadership skills. She explained that there were times in which she felt at the bottom of the ladder of leaders, but as other leaders shared their experiences, she felt a sense of belonging, realizing that change could be made to improve local schools if the community came and stood together. Next, please. I would like to introduce something that Rodriguez mentioned during the interview, referring to how meeting a variety of people has positively impacted the work she does. I know people now, and I can reach out to them, and they can connect me with other people who reach out to other people. Pretty soon, it's like this web begins to form and all the ideas come together. She stated that initially she was uncertain about what sort of impact she could make. However, as she connected with others, she learned about people who she could rely on for support and began to feel empowered. Next, please. As we mentioned before, part of the work BHC Merced and the SAP focused on was increasing community engagement when talking about school funds and their allocation. The Local Control and Funding Formula, also known as the LCFF, is a groundbreaking education policy that changed the way the state distributes funds to school districts. Its purpose is to identify educational inequities and increase funds for underserved populations, such as low-income students, English learners, and foster care youth. The LCFF included a statute that made clear that community and parent engagement in both the planning and implementation stages for the allocation of the funds was mandatory. This led to the implementation of the Local Control and Accountability Plan, or LCAP, which is a tool to help institutions form plans and set goals for fund allocation. Its purpose is to improve student outcomes in partnership with local communities. As a result, a resolution was passed so budgets would require youth and parent involvement in decision making. Next, please. Zhang learned that much of his work was not only advocating for the residents in his city, but also being a guide to help them find their own voice. This included implementing a restorative justice structure in schools, which would help improve suspension and expulsion rates for students of color, and help them and their parents have the necessary resources to be more prepared during these processes. Unfortunately, school resources were not always made available with equity in mind, such as monolingual resources, which presented a language barrier. For example, the Student Code of Conduct, if available, is hard to comprehend for those that may not have the literacy skills to understand the complexity of the materials. Additionally, some parents who could not read English did not understand the materials at all. Zhang also believed that it's important to have culturally competent counselors working with students. During his interview, he stated, Hmong people make up about 43% of the school population, and the school's districts just kind of failed our Hmong students miserably. And that's including access to counselors and to teachers, which was below 1% or 0. Next, please. As an advocate, Zhang also realized that there was a lack of community involvement. He explained that although advocating meant fighting for people, many times people were unaware of what the fight was about. And so he realized he wanted to shift his focus from advocating to organizing, and with that, building power and capacity in transformative work. During his interview, he stated, I was doing a lot of advocacy work where I usually speak on behalf of people, and a lot of the time, they don't really know why I'm fighting for them. He focused on raising the voices of those affected by school inequities and provided a space for them to speak freely and bring more people together to create leaders. Zhang stated that people in the community are important when making change, otherwise, changes do not stay in place. He made sure to emphasize that there was a significant difference between advocating and organizing. He defined organizing as very intentionally helping people, nurturing their skills, and realizing their potential. Next, please. The SAT, along with BHC Merced, have worked to address challenges within schools. One of the challenges was that parents and guardians were often unaware that school board meetings were happening, or that important factors that affect student achievement were being discussed at these meetings, such as school budget allocations. The lack of transparency was occurring with not only the allocation of the funds, but with the very meetings, which were often held outside of the communities. With the help of BHC Merced, Zhang's efforts successfully secured resources to address the issue of accessibility, with the student handbook being translated into Spanish and Hmong. In addition, automated phone calls to homes and social media posts were also translated into multiple languages. Rodriguez shared that the addition of Spanish and Hmong interpreters also positively impacted community attendance. Zhang and the SAT brought large numbers of people to advocate that the school board meetings be both transparent in their promotion and outreach, and that they also be held where parents were able to attend. They succeeded in getting the meetings embedded into the community, with meeting spaces being moved to neighborhood school campuses so that their scheduled times and physical access were not barriers. Next, please. When asked about plans for the future, Zhang stated that there is still more work to be done, such as increasing parent involvement in the school system and its decision-making processes, which included implementing a participatory budget process. He also noted that he would like to see more transparency between schools and the community, as the community needs to have input regarding allocation of LCAP funds. As he shared, these funds were still being applied to general funds which potentially dilutes their ability to improve student outcomes. He also explained that they would continue to help educate parents, guardians, and youth allies so that they are able to understand what the resources and materials mean in practice and how they can be used to improve outcomes for students. Another thing that Zhang deemed as important was one-on-one engagement, which meant meeting with residents and providing support to increase community voice through storytelling and connecting with each other through their shared experiences. Zhang noted that actively listening to what others have to share is an important part of being able to provide support to them. Next, please. Zhang stated that his work as a leader didn't just involve exploring and expanding his own skills, but rather also being able to nurture leadership in others. For Zhang, helping others move into leadership roles was an important part of learning that there is power in community organizing. This would include youth voices, which need to continue being lifted to achieve sustainable school improvements. While major changes have been successfully made over the last decade, there is still work to be done, especially in increasing the inclusiveness of community members from diverse backgrounds. Zhang explained that community organizing is vital to making significant progress in schools and in the community, an idea that closely aligns with Rodriguez's beliefs, who stated that organizing is the key to long-lasting change. Next, please. I would like to conclude this presentation with a quote from Zhang, which highlights the importance of bringing community voices together. He stated, "We have a story. Everybody has a story. The question is, can we get people out to the public arena so they could share the story? And can we get multiple people or resident leaders to come, hundreds of them, to share this story?" I would like to thank everyone who made this presentation titled Cultivating Connections, Leaders and Power Building for Merced School Equity possible. Thank you to the advocates and residents for their work, and thank you to our funders who made this work possible.